Hi, this is a video that's a part of my of my philosophy of religion playlist, and I'm doing another article out of this anthology, the philosophy of religion Lewis Pointman anthology, and previously in the teleological argument I discussed the Watch and the Watchmaker, and I discussed um, the dialogues concerning natural religion by David Hume, the second part, and now I'm going to discuss. It's a excerpt from Richard Swinburne's book, The Existence of God, which was published in '79, and this is called the argument from design. What he does here is he does something that I find very, very interesting. Is he is using certain scientific um, terminology, and he uses um, what I think would come from some philosophy of natural science. And first of all, there's two kinds of scientific explanation that needs to be discussed here. First, there's the there's actually there's Swinburne says there's two kinds of explanation. There's scientific explanation, and then there's personal explanation. And there's two kinds of scientific explanation that he discusses here. First is the Hempelian account of scientific explanation, named after Carl Hempel, and it's to provide a scientific explanation of an event is roughly to show that the occurrence of the event is logically implied by the occurrence of particular circumstances that obtained prior to the event, together with facts about the laws of nature. And then there's the powers and liabilities account of scientific explanation, which says that providing a scientific explanation for an event is a matter of showing that the event's cause had powers to bring about the event that it was liable to exercise under the given circumstances. And then Swinburne also uses the notion of simplicity, saying that if theory A is simpler than theory B, theory A is to be preferred. And that is discussed before the article is even given. It's something I've read about the powers and liabilities one somewhere before. I don't think I've read the Carl Hempel one. Anyway, first of all, Swinburne discusses spatial order and temporal order, because those are the two teleological arguments that he distinguishes, and then he really pounds out the second form, the temporal form. First of all, there is irregularity of co-presence would be a town with all its roads at right angles to each other, or a section of books in a library arranged in alphabetical order of authors. Regularities of succession are simple patterns of behavior of objects, such as their behavior in accordance with the laws of nature. For example, Newton's laws. Okay. And a working car consists of many parts so adjusted to each other that it follows the instructions of the driver delivered by his pulling and pushing a few levers and buttons and turning a wheel to take passengers whither he wishes. Its order arises because its parts are so arranged in some instant regularity of co-presence that the laws of nature being as they are, regularity of succession, it brings about the result neatly and efficiently. The order of living animals and plants likewise result from regularities of both types. So it's like the car. A car has, it has certain parts that work together, as well as, those parts working together, sitting in a certain way, working in a certain way as they are, sitting how they are, the regularities of co-presence, along with the laws of nature, which makes the stuff work together which is the regularities of succession. And then I'm gonna skip the spatial ones. And then he discusses Paley's watchmaker, and he discusses the dialogues. And then he says, we can reconstruct the argument from... Oh, wait. And then I pass on to consider a form of teleological argument, which seems to me a much stronger one, the teleological argument from the temporal order of the world. The temporal order of the universe is, to the man who bothers to give that a moment's thought, an overwhelmingly striking fact about it. Regularities of succession are all pervasive. For simple laws govern almost all successions of events. In books of physics, chemistry, and biology, we can learn almost how everything in the world behaves. The laws of their behavior can be set out by relatively simple formulae, which men can understand, and by means of which they can successfully predict their future. The orderliness of the universe to which I draw attention here is its conformity to formula, to simple, formulable scientific laws. The orderliness of the universe in this respect is a very striking fact about it. The universe might so naturally have been chaotic, but it is not. It is very orderly. Now that is just recognizing how things behave. Like it's like well, pretty much what Swinburne does in the whole book in general, not really in this section that is in this anthology, but in the whole book he discusses how an argument for the existence of a deity is best as an inductive one, saying that this and this happens a certain way, and it's going to keep happening like that, so we can generalize well out, that it's all going to happen that way all the time. So there's a certain order behind the orderliness. And then just like the fact that, let's say on Saturday you go out and you drive your car, and it gets you to, let's say, Detroit. Let's say it gets you to Detroit when you leave from Ann Arbor, and and then let's say you drive back on the same day, and then on Sunday you try to drive your car, and it doesn't start, and the mechanic can't fix it because the parts, there's just, everything is just so chaotic for whatever reason. The universe doesn't work that way. It doesn't. If there's a car, if there's a car that was made by a normal company that makes cars, they're going to align it in a certain way with so that the laws of nature can make it so that each day that you start your car is going to work. Or each day, if I drop a book on the ground, it's going to keep. If I keep holding it like this, it's not going to, as I let go of it, it's not going to one day. It's not going to one day drop to here and then stay here. Every time I do it, it's going to drop. That is how, regular inductive arguments work. We observe certain things, X, Y, and Z, and then it ends up that we can formulate a certain argument. Let's say with science, that such and such will most likely happen. It's all going to conform with whatever. The basic skeleton of the teleological argument is that we see all this order in the universe, and I like how Swinburne puts it with regularities of co-presence and succession, so that each time we try and do something, there's going to be certain aspects of orderliness that we see in the world. so that we can see that each time, and we can see that in every single thing, so that we can infer a certain thing beyond that. And then he discusses a certain possible objection that the world has this very peculiar characteristic, may be challenged in various ways. And it may be said that the order which we've seen in the universe was that we imposed the order on the world. The premise of a good teleological argument is not that so far within his life or within human history that things have conformed to a pattern which man can recognize and describe. The premise is rather that things have and will continue to conform to such a pattern, however initial conditions vary, however men interfere with the world. If induction is justified, we are justified in supposing that things will continue to behave as they have behaved in the kinds of respect which scientists and ordinary people recognize and describe. I assume that we are justified in believing that the laws of gravity and chemical cohesion will continue to hold tomorrow, that stones will fall, desks will hold together tomorrow as well as today, however initial conditions vary, however men interfere with the world. Okay, that, just like, how I was saying, I will not drop this one day, come back here the very next day, and I try and drop it, and then it'll stop right here. It's not going to happen. An objector may now urge that although the order of the universe is an objective matter, nevertheless, unless the universe were an orderly place, men would not be around to comment on the fact. Hence, there is nothing surprising in the fact that men find order. They could not possibly find anything else. This conclusion is clearly a little too strong. There would need to be quite a bit of order in and around our bodies of men to exist and think, but there could be chaos outside the earth, so long as the earth was largely unaffected by that chaos. So he's sitting here, taking away our objections. At this point, we need to rephrase our premises in terms of the powers and liabilities account of science, this is where some magic happens, I think. Powers and liabilities account of science, which we have seen reasons for preferring to the Hegelian account. On this account, the powers and liabilities account, what the all-pervasive temporal order amounts to is the fact that throughout space and time there are physical objects of various kinds, every such object having the powers and liabilities which are described in the laws of nature, e.g. the power of attracting each other physical objects in the universe is the force of so-and-so dynes, where lambda is a gravitational constant. The liability is always to exercise its power, and the liability to be attracted to each other body in the universe with the force of such and such dynes, and so on. It is this, unlike the feature to which I have drawn attention so far, it is not one of which men have always known. It is one which the atomic theory of chemistry strongly suggested, and the discovery of fundamental particles confirmed. It is this: the physical objects scattered throughout space and time are composed of particles of few limited kinds, which we call fundamental particles. Whether the protons and electrons which we suppose to be the fundamental particles are in fact fundamental, or whether they are composed of yet more fundamental particles, e.g. quarks, which are capable of independent existence, is not altogether clear. But what does seem clear is that if there are yet more fundamental particles, they too come in a few specific kinds. So he's saying pretty much here that nature has its building blocks. You go on a lot of different levels here. Put in these terms, then, the orderliness of nature is a matter of vast uniformity in the powers and liabilities of bodies throughout endless time and space, and also in the paucity of kinds of components of bodies. Or over centuries long ago, and over distance in millions of light years from ourselves. The same universal orderliness reigns. There are, as we have seen, explanations of only two kinds for phenomena. scientific explanation and personal explanation. Yeah, although a scientific explanation can be provided of why the more specific powers and liabilities of bodies hold, e.g., why an electron exerts just the attractive force, which it does, in terms of more general powers and liabilities possessed by all bodies. Put in Hempelian terms, why a particular natural law holds in terms of more general natural laws. So pretty much what's being shown through powers and liabilities way of looking at it is showing something different here. It's showing the whole idea of the fundamental particles. Science cannot explain why all bodies do possess the same very general powers and liabilities. It is with this fact that scientific explanation stops. So either the orderliness of nature is where all explanation stops, or we must postulate an agent of great power and knowledge who brings about through his continuous action that bodies have the same very general powers and liabilities, that the most general natural laws operate. And once again, the simplest such agent to postulate is one of infinite power, knowledge, and freedom, i.e., God. An additional consideration here is that it is clearly vastly simpler to suppose that the existence and order of the world has some cause, and the consideration would lead us to postulate being infinite power, knowledge, and freedom as a cause of former to reinforce the considerations would lead us to postulate as a cause for the latter. So pretty much, there's scientific explanation only up to a point, such as this picture allows us to draw attention to one feature of the orderliness of the universe, which the other picture makes it easy to ignore. Unlike the feature to which I have drawn attention to so far, it is not one of which men have always known. It is one which the atomic theory of chemistry strongly suggested, and the discovery of the fundamental particles confirmed it. It is this: the physical objects scattered throughout space and time are composed of particles of a few limited kinds, which we call fundamental particles. Whether the protons and electrons, which are supposed to be fundamental particles, are in fact fundamental, or whether they are composed of yet more fundamental particles, which are capable of independent existence, is not altogether clear. But what does seem clear is that if there are yet more fundamental particles, they too come in a few specific kinds. Nature only has building blocks of a few kinds. Each particle of a given kind has a few defining properties which determine its behavior and which are specific to that kind. All electrons have a mass of this, charge of this, spin of this, etc. There are innumerably many articles which belong to each of a few kinds, and no particles with characteristics intermediate between those two kinds. The properties of fundamental kinds, that is, which give specific form to the general powers which all objects have, belong to a small class. And the powers and liabilities of large-scale objects are determined by those of their fundamental components. Particles have constant characteristics over time. They only change their characteristics, or are destroyed, or are converted into other particles by reason of their own liabilities, or the action of other particles acting in virtue of their powers. Put in these terms, then, the orderliness of the universe is a matter of the vast uniformity in the powers and liabilities of bodies throughout endless time and space, also in the positive kind of the components of bodies. Okay. The reason I find this to be extremely interesting and important is because he uses that little power and liabilities form of scientific explanation to show that there are not only, the certain things. There's the law. There's the regulations of co-presence. All that stuff being together, like all the fundamental particles being there together, along with the regularity of succession, and that's all, which is the laws of nature, all there together, and that yet does not explain a certain thing. All that, all those fundamental particles, it doesn't, you don't go from, a certain book down to molecules and atoms and all that stuff, and down to protons, and then, it doesn't, it goes down to certain fundamental particles. It's just like all the stuff being in a car, set in a certain way. A mechanic, a person who makes a car puts all that stuff, set in one variation of a certain way, it would be junk. All of it would be junk. But the person who makes the car, or the person who created the factory that makes the car, allows all those things to be there in a certain, with the regularity of co-presence, all there in a certain way, so that a certain force can go through it to make it work a certain way, to have a certain purpose, and then you have the regularity of succession, or the laws of nature, which come through it, allow it to work. But then that's then we have, so we have the nature, like parts of nature. There's fundamental particles. All those are set in a certain way, and they're all set in a certain way. The regularity of succession is in presence with the regularity of co-presence, and it's all there. The particles of the fundamental particles making everything that exists, and then there's the laws of nature, which make things happen, and yet we have a certain uniformity, an orderliness. Swinburne, discusses here that we cannot really rule out a certain uniformity by saying, oh, the man implements this and imposes upon the world a certain uniformity. Science, he says that it comes to a point here. Science can explain the laws of nature. Science explains the particles. Science explains how they all sit there and how it works a certain way. But science is not able to explain the uniformity that is still there in everything. If one takes some time to look at stuff, you're going to find some kind of uniformity or orderliness. And Swinburne says that science cannot really explain that part. That, I think, is a really important thing to think about. But then there's, I think that this is a very, very good argument here. Why do we keep saying that? Arguments aren't good. You don't say arguments are good. You say it's valid, sound, strong, depending on deductive and inductive arguments. His argument here is sound. I think it is sound because it shows that there's a certain something there, which is that the uniformity itself that cannot be explained by all this science that is there. this can't really be explained. And people who are people who live by science are gonna weigh that uniformity off as something else. That's how this isn't, that's how they weigh this off. That's how they, shove it off as something else, or not, or it's not a sound or valid argument. They say that they will make that uniformity or that order into something else, or to something lesser. But I think if you really look at nature, look at the world, look at people, look at a lot of things, and you will find order that if you really take some time to look at it. And even people who are atheists, find order in the world, but they will say it's from a different source. It's not. They will say that there's not an orderer, but there's something else that's not an orderer or designer, but it's something that is not organic. There's something that is not living, such as the Big Bang Theory accompanied with evolution. Evolution can be shown to be orderly, but even though I don't believe in that, I don't believe in evolution. So yeah, the big question here is not if whether science can explain uniformity, because it can't. I'm highly confident it can't. The question here is to whether what Swinburne's saying here is a valid or sound argument for an orderer behind it, or a designer. That's the real question. I would say that it does not. It doesn't really do that well to show that there's an orderer. I think it shows that there's something there that science really can't take into account, and that is a tip of a certain iceberg. That's what I think. I think that's progress. I don't think that it goes. I think it would be a slippery slope to say that. I think it would be a slippery slope, a bit of a slippery slope to say that this science not being able to explain a certain orderliness in the world would be a slippery slope to say that there's a designer or an orderer behind this whole world thing. But it's a tip of the iceberg, because having something that science cannot explain, that's big. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on this. Let me know if you think that this does actually really give a good argument for a God being behind this, because uniformity can be shown in the Big Bang Theory, or evolution. There can be a lot of uniformity shown there, whether it was there or not. There are scientific atheists who use science to argue those things, and will show uniformity in those things as well, and then that doesn't show that there's a God behind that. No, but it shows that there's something that science can't explain. That's a tip of a big, long iceberg. Is what I think. So yeah, tell me what you think on this.